October 7th, 2024. A courtroom in Fort Myers, Florida. The judge is about to hand down a sentence in a double murder case that has captivated the nation not because of the brutality of the crimes, though they were brutal, not because of the complexity of the investigation, though it was complex, but because of something that happens in the gallery. Women. Dozens of women. Some dressed up, some wearing makeup specifically chosen for this moment, some holding signs. They are here to support the man being sentenced, the man who strangled 2 women to death in a single day, dumped their bodies, showed no remorse, and whose face is covered in tattoos that make him look, according to his own defense attorney, demonic. His name is Wade Wilson, and the question that has haunted this case from the moment it became public, the question that has generated thousands of social media posts, hundreds of think pieces, endless debates about psychology and society, and the nature of attraction, is this. Why? Why would anyone show up to support this man? What is it about Wade Wilson that inspires this kind of devotion from people who have never met him, who know what he did, who watched the trial, who heard the evidence? Stay with me, because the answer is darker and more disturbing than you might think. And it tells us something important about how we process violence, celebrity, and the image of danger in the modern world. Before we go further, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Here at Forensic Disconnect, we go deeper than the headlines. We examine the evidence, the psychology, and the human stories behind cases that deserve to be remembered. New investigations every week. Wade Wilson was born in 1994. He grew up in Florida. His early life, by most accounts, was not particularly remarkable. No documented history of extreme abuse, no obvious warning signs that would have predicted what he would become. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. He developed a criminal record. Drug offenses, assault, battery, the kind of escalating pattern that law enforcement sees in individuals who are testing boundaries, pushing limits, seeing how far they can go before consequences catch up with them. By his early 20s, Wade Wilson had been in and out of the criminal justice system multiple times, and by October 2019, he was about to commit the acts that would make him infamous. October 7th, 2019. Cape Coral, Florida. Wade Wilson meets a woman named Kristine Melton at a bar. She is 35 years old. She is a mother. She has a life, a family, people who care about her. Wade goes home with her that night, and at some point in the early morning hours of October 7th, he strangles her to death. He uses his hands. He applies pressure to her neck until she stops breathing. Then he leaves her body in her home, and he goes out looking for his next victim. Later that same day, he encounters a woman named Diane Ruiz. She is 43 years old. She is walking along the street. Wade attacks her. He forces her into his car. He drives her to a remote location, and then he strangles her too. But he does not stop there. After she is dead, he runs over her body with his car, multiple times. He crushes her. He disfigures her. He makes sure that when she is found, and she will be found, the violence inflicted on her is unmistakable. Then he dumps her body and goes about his day. 2 women, strangled to death, in a single day. By a man who, according to testimony at his trial, showed no remorse, no hesitation, no indication that what he had done weighed on him in any meaningful way. Wade Wilson was arrested. He was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. And as the case moved through the legal system, as evidence was presented, as witnesses testified, as the details of what he did became public, something unexpected happened. He became famous. Not infamous in the traditional sense, though he was certainly that. He became the subject of obsession. Women began following his case, posting about him on social media, creating fan pages, writing letters. And when his trial began, when he appeared in court, they showed up, in person, to support him. The trial of Wade Wilson was a media spectacle. Cameras were allowed in the courtroom. Every moment was broadcast, every testimony, every piece of evidence. The families of Kristine Melton and Diane Ruiz had to sit in that courtroom and listen to the details of how their loved ones were killed. They had to see photographs. They had to hear recordings. They had to relive, in excruciating detail, the worst moments of their lives. And through it all, there were women in the gallery. Not family members of the victims, not supporters of justice. Women who were there because of Wade Wilson, because they found him attractive, because they believed, despite all evidence to the contrary, that he was misunderstood, that there was something redeemable in him, that he deserved support, compassion, even love. The phenomenon of women being attracted to violent criminals is not new. It has a name: Hybristophilia. It is a paraphilia, a pattern of sexual arousal in response to partners who have committed crimes, particularly violent crimes. The more dangerous the individual, the more transgressive their actions, the stronger the attraction. Psychologists have studied this phenomenon for decades. They have interviewed women who fall into this pattern. And what they have found is that the attraction is not random. It is not simply a matter of physical appearance, though that can play a role. It is deeper. It is rooted in fantasy, in the construction of a narrative that allows the individual to reframe the violence, the danger, the clear evidence of harm into something that feels romantic, protective, misunderstood. In the case of Wade Wilson, the attraction is complicated by his appearance. His face is covered in tattoos, dark, intricate designs that extend across his forehead, his cheeks, his neck. Tattoos that include symbols associated with violence, with gangs, with a deliberate rejection of societal norms. His own defense attorney during the trial acknowledged that Wade's appearance works against him. She said, and this is a direct quote, that his tattoos make him look demonic. She was trying to argue that his appearance would bias the jury, that they would see him as a monster because of how he looks, not because of what he did. But here is the uncomfortable truth. For some people, that appearance is not a deterrent. It is the attraction. The tattoos, the defiance, the visual representation of someone who has rejected every rule, every boundary, every expectation that society places on behavior, that becomes the draw. There is also the name, Wade Wilson. The same name as the fictional character Deadpool, a Marvel anti-hero known for violence, dark humor, and a scarred appearance. The real Wade Wilson has no connection to the character beyond the name, but the association has been made. Social media posts refer to him as the Deadpool killer. The nickname has stuck. And for individuals who exist in online spaces where fictional anti-heroes are celebrated, where the line between fiction and reality is blurred, where dangerous men are romanticized because they are framed as tragic or misunderstood, the nickname creates a cognitive shortcut. It allows people to project the characteristics of a fictional anti-hero, a character designed to be sympathetic despite his violence, onto a real person who strangled 2 women to death. The psychology behind this is complex, but it is not incomprehensible. For some individuals, particularly those who feel disempowered in their own lives, the idea of being the one person who truly understands a dangerous man, the one person who can reach him when no one else can, is intoxicating. It is a fantasy of significance, of being special, of having a connection that transcends the ordinary boundaries of human relationships. The violence that the man has committed is not ignored exactly. It is reframed. He is not a killer. He is someone who has been failed by society, by his upbringing, by circumstances beyond his control. And the individual who is attracted to him sees themselves as the person who can save him, who can show him that there is another way, who can be the reason he changes. This is, of course, a delusion. Wade Wilson did not strangle 2 women because society failed him. He strangled 2 women because he made a choice. He chose to put his hands around Kristine Melton's neck and apply pressure until she stopped breathing. He chose to attack Diane Ruiz. He chose to run over her body with his car. Multiple times. Those were choices. Deliberate, conscious, volitional acts. And the consequences of those choices are not abstract. They are real. 2 women are dead. Their families are grieving. Their absence is permanent. No amount of romanticization, no amount of reframing, no amount of belief in redemption changes that fact. But the women who showed up to support Wade Wilson in court were not thinking about Kristine Melton or Diane Ruiz. They were thinking about Wade, about his story, about the narrative they had constructed in their minds. Some of them dressed up for court, makeup, hair done, clothing chosen specifically to be seen, because they knew the cameras would be there. They knew the trial was being broadcast, and they wanted to be part of it. They wanted to be visible, to be noticed, to be, in some small way, part of Wade Wilson's story. And that desire to be part of the story, to insert themselves into the narrative of a violent crime, is one of the most disturbing aspects of this entire phenomenon. The trial proceeded. Evidence was presented. The prosecution laid out a clear, compelling case. Wade Wilson had strangled Kristine Melton. He had attacked Diane Ruiz. He had dumped her body. He had shown no remorse. The defense had very little to work with. They could not dispute the facts. They could not argue that Wade was innocent. Their strategy was mitigation, arguing that Wade's life circumstances, his history, his struggles, should be considered when determining his sentence. They asked the jury to recommend life in prison rather than the death penalty. The jury deliberated, and they came back with a recommendation: death for both murders. On October 7, 2024, exactly 5 years after he killed Kristine Melton and Diane Ruiz, Wade Wilson was formally sentenced to death. The judge, in handing down the sentence, did not mince words. She described the murders as heinous, atrocious, and cruel. She noted the aggravating factors: the lack of remorse, the brutality of the crimes, the fact that there were two separate victims. She sentenced Wade Wilson to death by lethal injection. He is currently on death row in Florida, where he will remain until his appeals are exhausted or until the sentence is carried out. And through it all, through the trial, through the sentencing, through the media coverage, the women who supported him did not go away. They continued to post on social media. They continued to write letters. Some of them have said publicly that they do not believe he is guilty, despite the evidence, despite his own admissions, despite the testimony of witnesses. They have constructed a version of events in which Wade Wilson is innocent, or misunderstood, or acting in self-defense, or any number of explanations that allow them to maintain the fantasy that he is not a cold-blooded killer, but rather someone who deserves their support. This phenomenon is not unique to Wade Wilson. It happens in case after case. Ted Bundy received thousands of love letters while on death row. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, married one of his admirers while in prison. Eric Menendez, convicted of murdering his parents, married a woman who had been writing to him. Charles Manson had followers who believed in him even after he orchestrated brutal murders. The pattern repeats. Violent men attract obsessive attention, and some of that attention comes from women who, for reasons rooted in psychology, trauma, fantasy, or some combination of all three, are drawn to danger in a way that overrides rational assessment of risk. But here is what makes the Wade Wilson case particularly disturbing: the ubiquity of social media, the accessibility of information. In the past, if someone wanted to follow a criminal case, they had to rely on newspapers, television, limited sources of information. Now, every detail is available instantly. Trial footage is streamed live. Social media posts dissect every moment. Fan pages are created. Communities form around specific cases, around specific individuals. And those communities reinforce the beliefs of their members. If you are someone who is attracted to Wade Wilson, you can find hundreds, maybe thousands of other people who share that attraction. You can post about it. You can discuss it. You can normalize it. And the boundaries between fantasy and reality, between the fictional anti-hero and the real killer, become increasingly blurred. The families of Kristine Melton and Diane Ruiz have had to watch this unfold. They have had to see women fawning over the man who killed their loved ones. They have had to read social media posts defending him. They have had to exist in a world where the man who destroyed their lives is treated, by a subset of the population, as a celebrity. The pain of that, the injustice of that, is difficult to articulate. Kristine Melton and Diane Ruiz are not characters in a story. They were real people. They had lives. They had families. They had futures that were stolen from them. And the man who stole those futures is now the subject of fan pages, of love letters, of courtroom appearances where women show up in makeup and dresses, hoping to be seen by him. There is a broader cultural conversation that needs to happen about how we process violence, how we consume true crime content, how we engage with cases involving real victims and real perpetrators. True crime has become one of the most popular genres of entertainment. Podcasts, documentaries, YouTube channels, all dedicated to examining cases of murder, abduction, violence. And there is value in that. There is value in understanding how these crimes happen, in learning from investigative techniques, in honoring the memories of victims by telling their stories with respect and accuracy. But there is also a risk. The risk that the violence becomes entertainment, that the perpetrators become characters, that the real human cost is lost in the narrative. Wade Wilson is not an anti-hero. He is not misunderstood. He is not a tragic figure deserving of sympathy. He is a man who made a deliberate choice to kill 2 women in a single day. He strangled Kristine Melton. He attacked Diane Ruiz, strangled her, and then ran over her body with his car. Those are the facts. And no amount of attraction, no amount of fan pages, no amount of romanticization changes those facts. The women who showed up to support him in court are entitled to their feelings, but they are not entitled to rewrite the reality of what he did. They are not entitled to erase Kristine Melton and Diane Ruiz from the narrative, and they are not entitled to turn a double murder into a romance. If you are someone who finds yourself attracted to violent criminals, if you find yourself constructing narratives that excuse or minimize their actions, if you find yourself more focused on the perpetrator than the victim, it is worth asking yourself why. What need is that attraction fulfilling? What fantasy is it serving? And what does it say about how you view violence, how you view women, how you view accountability? Because the reality is that Wade Wilson will spend the rest of his life on death row. He will not be redeemed. He will not be saved. He will not be the romantic figure that some people have constructed in their minds. He will be a man who killed 2 women and who will face the consequences of that choice. And Kristine Melton and Diane Ruiz will still be gone. Their families will still be grieving. And the women who showed up to support Wade Wilson will have to reconcile at some point the fact that their support was given to a man who destroyed lives without hesitation and without remorse. Wade Wilson is currently on death row in Florida. His case is in the appeals process, which in death penalty cases can take years, sometimes decades. He may never actually be executed. The appeals may result in a commutation to life in prison, or the legal process may drag on long enough that he dies of natural causes before the sentence is carried out. But regardless of how his story ends, the damage he caused is permanent. Kristine Melton is dead. Diane Ruiz is dead. Their families are left to carry that loss for the rest of their lives. And the spectacle of women showing up to court to support the man who killed them is a reminder that our relationship with violence, with celebrity, with the narratives we construct around danger, is deeply broken. If this case matters to you, subscribe to Forensic Disconnect, hit that like button, share this video, and drop your thoughts in the comments. But remember, these are not just stories. These are real people, real lives, real families. Kristine Melton and Diane Ruiz deserve to be remembered not as footnotes in the story of Wade Wilson's trial, but as individuals whose lives mattered, whose absence is felt, and whose deaths should never have happened. The man who killed them is facing the consequences of his actions, but the women whose lives he took will never get that justice. They will never get their lives back. And that is the reality that no amount of fan pages, no amount of courtroom appearances, no amount of romanticization can change.